Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Would You Read It Challenge video for October 2023. The Would You Read It Challenge was a booktube tag that was started by @2 Brody. The purpose was to pick a variety of books through whatever parameters you like, read the first sentence of each book, and then ask your audience if they'd want to continue with it and discuss that. I always thought one sentence is too short, so I elongated it to like the first page or the first few paragraphs. And I am picking my books. I've been picking them one, ballot per month. I'm picking them from the BookTube Prize of yesteryear. The BookTube Prize is another BookTube tradition started by Robert at Barter Hordes. The intention is for volunteer judges to judge the best in literary fiction and nonfiction published in the US the year before. We are currently on hiatus, but we have 5 years behind us and long lists of 48 books in fiction for each of those years, and that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at ballots of fiction, just going like, one to the next of the long list. And right now I am in 2020 looking at the Octafinals ballot for Group E. So my intention is to read the first few paragraphs of each book and then reveal the title and then discuss my thoughts. In this case, I was an official judge in 2020, but I did not read any of these books for the BookTube Prize, and none of them advanced to the finals, so they might be stuck in obscurity perhaps, but now we get to revisit them, at least, the first page. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting with book number 1. They were drifting on her stepfather's boat in the middle of an otherwise empty man-made lake encircled by a large tract of houses. It was early autumn, and they were drinking Southern Comfort from the bottle. Adam was in front of the boat, watching a changeable blue light across the water that was probably a television seen through a window or a glass door. He heard the scrape of her lighter, then saw smoke float over him, unravel. For a long time he had been speaking. When he turned to see what effect his speech had had, she was gone, jeans and sweater in a little pile with the pipe and lighter. He said her name, suddenly aware of the surrounding quiet, and put his hand in the water, which was cold. Unthinkingly, he lifted her white sweater and smelled the wood smoke from earlier that evening at Clinton Lake, the synthetic lavender of what he knew to be her shower gel. A few birds skimmed the undisturbed surface of the lake. No, those were bats. When did she dive or step off the boat, and how could she have made no splash, and what if she had drowned? He yelled now. A dog responded in the distance. From spinning around in search of her, he felt dizzy and sat down. Then he stood again and looked along the edges of the boat. Maybe she was just beside it, stifling her laughter. But she wasn't. And that was from The Topeka School by Ben Lerner. Book 2. Departure. Mouths open to the sun, they sleep. Boy and girl, foreheads pearled with sweat, cheeks red and streaked white with dry spit. They occupy the entire space in the back of the car, spread out, limbs offering, heavy and placid. From the co-pilot's seat, I glance back to check on them every so often, then turn around again to study the map. We advance in the slow lava traffic toward the city limits, across the GW Bridge, and merge onto the interstate. An airplane passes above us and leaves a straight long scar on the palette of the cloudless sky. Behind the wheel, my husband adjusts his hat, dries his forehead with the back of his hand. Family lexicon. I don't know what my husband and I will say to each of our children one day. I'm not sure which parts of our story we might each choose to pluck and edit out for them, which ones we'll shuffle around and insert back in to produce the final version. Even though plucking, shuffling, and editing sounds is probably the best summary of what my husband and I do for a living. But the children will ask because ask is what children do. And we'll need to tell them a beginning, middle, and end. We'll need to give them an answer, tell them a proper story. And that's from The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Lucelli. Book 3. The child is dead. There is nothing left to know. I hear there is a queen in the South who kills the man who brings her bad news. So when I give word of the boy's death, do I write my own death with it? Truth eats lies, just as the crocodile eats the moon, and yet my witness is the same today as it will be tomorrow. No, I did not kill him. though I might have wanted him dead. Craved for it the way a glutton craves goat flesh. Oh, to draw a bow and fire it through his black heart and watch it explode black blood, and to watch his eyes for when they stop blinking, for when they look but stop seeing, and to listen for his voice croaking and hear his chest heave its death rattle saying, "Look, my wretched spirit leaves this most wretched of bodies," and to smile at such tidings and to dance to such a loss. Yes, I glut at the conceit of it. But no, I did not kill him. Bioju rienu apamo. Not everything the eye sees should be spoken by the mouth. And that was from Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. Book 4. Queenie, in the stirrups now. Queenie, wish you were here. I locked my phone and carried on looking at the ceiling before unlocking it and sending a follow-up XX. That would prove to Tom that I wasn't as emotionally detached as he accuses me of being. "Can you just bring your bottom right to the edge of the exam table?" the doctor asked as I inched myself down closer to her face. Honestly, I've no idea how they do it. "Deep breaths, please," she said, a bit too cheerfully, and with no further warning inserted what felt like the world's least ergonomic dildo into me and moved it around like a joystick. She placed a cold hand on my stomach, pressing down every few seconds and pursing her lips every time I squealed. To divert my attention from this manipulation of my insides, I checked my phone. No reply. "So, what do you do, Queenie?" the doctor asked, glancing at my chart. Wasn't it enough that she could literally see inside of me? "I work at a newspaper," I say, lifting my head to make eye contact when I responded, as seemed like the polite thing to do. And that was from Queenie by Candace Carty Williams. Book 5. When you are all sinew, struggle, and solitude, you're young. Being soft, plump, vulnerable may remind you of prey. To be woken, biffed in the face by the paw of a sleeping kitten. The damp, furry closeness in the crowded den sometimes gives her an overwarm sensation akin to nausea or boredom. Shaking her long limbs as far as space permitted, she longed to be out on her winding path, ranging wide in search of deer. In her dreams she slaughtered whole herds. She sought that first firm clasp on a stag's neck, the swift parting of its hide, her mouth filling at last with what was hot and wet and necessary. For all of life is really to recoil and leap, leap and recoil. Alertness was her new mode, but the cubs' easy slumber was contagious. She was always briefly astounded on waking by their continued presence. They troubled her. They were so needy. If she died, they would die too, and soon. And she would forget them. But for now, she belonged to them. They were not so much a conscious concern as the whole purpose of her being. Lives engendered by her body, created inside her and released through pain and panting upon the world. She had borne them, and now she fed them with her milk. They were part of her still. And that was from Duck's Newburyport by Lucy Ellman. And finally, Book 6. An old woman sits on the beach, a cushion strapped to her bottom, sorting algae that is washed ashore. She's used to spending time in the water, but even on land she's vigilant to the environment around her. Jeju is her home, an island known for three abundances: wind, stones, and women. Today, the most capricious of these, the wind, is but a gentle breeze. Not a single cloud smudges the sky. The sun warms her head, neck, and back through her bonnet and other clothing. So soothing. Her house perches on the rocky shoreline overlooking the sea. It doesn't look like much, just two small structures made from native stone, but the location. Her children and her grandchildren have suggested she allow them to convert the buildings into a restaurant and bar. "Oh, Granny, you'll be rich. You'll never have to work again." One of her neighbors did as the younger generation asked. Now the woman's house is a guest house and an Italian restaurant. On Young Suk's beach, in her village. "There isn't enough money in all the pockets in all Korea to make me leave," Young Suk had said many times. How could she? Her house is the nest where she hides the joy, laughter, sorrows, and regrets of her life. And that was from The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. Okay, I might go chronologically, knowing so little about these books, although some do, jump out at me as maybe being buzzier, or, they stuck in my mind a little more than others. The Topeka School is one of them. that, you know, I don't know, I clung on to that name. You know, I think of Topeka, Kansas, and my mother growing up in the Kansas, Missouri area, and how, you know, they spend a lot of time on lakes for fun. But this particular beginning, it looks like we're setting up for something, you know, kind of scary, that this woman disappears. I always thought it was a weird beginning, though. Like, it talks about how the narrator was talking, but we don't hear any of the talking. And I don't know, it, you know, is a disappeared woman, which is, I don't know, kind of a cliche in a way. So that kind of, you know, jarred me. Although, you know, if she's found or something, you know, that might change things. But there are like some great descriptions of the lake. I like how the bats come in. It feels like, you know, something to like indicate tension and that something's more amiss. Then with book two, actually that's another one, The Lost Children Archive. That one also stuck in my head. I didn't like it as much, though. It felt like, you know, she was beginning the story. She hasn't really begun the story yet, and yet she's begun it twice. Her first beginning is just a description of driving on a highway. And then the second one is her saying, you know, I don't know what we're going to say. We're just going to have to tell them the story. And by this point, I'm like, you know, well, maybe we should get to telling the story. It's just a little too much of a pretentious conceit for me. And then, yeah, book three is the same. Yeah, these are all pretty buzzy, I guess, so far. Black Leopard, Red Wolf was pretty big. You know, the jump from somebody who's, you know, jump from somebody who was really well known for, you know, straight up literary into speculative fiction. And I think some of the dramatic statements he said about, like, why he would write this book and, like, taking from African mythology. I kind of knew from the start this one wouldn't really be for me. I stopped, you know, my reading right before some of the, you know, more, I guess, X-rated sexual content came along. And I just figured that wouldn't necessarily be for me, although I do think, you know, it's a well-written first few paragraphs. But that's probably where I would leave it in terms of my interest in the particular story. Yep, and then Queenie as well. I don't know what I was. Were there? I think maybe a couple at the bottom. I don't remember as well. But Queenie also was one that I remember from back then. And this one might be the most interesting to me so far. Maybe there's personal bias. Being a woman who knows what it's like to be at the gynecologist's office, I'm actually quite taken with Queenie and her ability to interact like a real human as this is going on inside of her. I guess you can't tell immediately if it's a regular exam or if maybe it's, you know, something related to pregnancy. But mostly I'm just stunned that she can be on the phone at all during this time. Yep, and then Duck's Newburyport is book 5. I gotta say, I was surprised by this beginning. Although speaking of, you know, possible pregnancy, this is about giving birth. It's obviously about a wild cat giving birth. I just wasn't expecting it for something called Duck's Newburyport to, you know, get the predator. And also, I guess my understanding of this really huge book is that it was mostly about a housewife is my recollection of, you know, what this book is about. Although I haven't read it, I probably won't, considering how sprawling it is. But I guess since it's so sprawling, it could be about a bunch of things. Or, you know, this could be the entranceway into talking about motherhood for humans. And then finally, book 6, I guess that was the one I don't really remember as well. So actually, of all 6 books, 5 of them I still, you know, remember being buzzy back in 2020. But The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. is the one I don't remember as much. And it might actually, either that or Queenie might be the most intriguing to me. This just has a lot of beautiful descriptions of an island in Korea. It is, you know, immediately about somebody who's, you know, stuck between worlds in a way, that she's like the old guard of this island, and that there's a push to, like, modernize or like, you know, push the older generation out even. So, you know, that's already some tension there. Yeah, that would be intriguing as well. So yeah, Queenie and The Island of Sea Women, I think, are the 2 that stuck out most to me. That maybe I'd read, but I probably won't because there's already so much to read. So that about covers it for me now. I will leave the Goodreads links to all 6 of these books linked down below, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you've read these books or have just experienced them with me for the first time here. So yeah, again, with the BookTube Prize, we are currently on a hiatus between seasons, but Robert, our director, recently posted a sign-up video that explains how you might sign up to become a judge for next year, and I hope you might consider joining us. It's a great way to read some buzzy titles in fiction and nonfiction and interact with the community. And unlike my last video, I'll actually link that video down below this time. So yeah, with that, I guess I'll, put the BookTube Prize a little bit more on hiatus again and move on to other videos. I should be back on this channel imminently for my next AM reading update. In fact, my final AM reading update of October, and my final AM reading update for a little while, since I switched things up in November for National Novel Writing Month. But stay tuned, and in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.